Okay. Um, Thank you for coming. I guess probably to no one's surprise, it's me doing the Plone thing. So I have, I don't know, about 60 slides, and Mark didn't want me to talk for 5 minutes each, so I guess I'll try to slim it down. The biggest problem I have is trying to summarize essentially 10 years of experience with Plone at UW Oshkosh in an hour and 15 minutes. And so please forgive me if I skip over a lot of stuff, or if I go too quickly, stop me, interrupt me, ask questions. But keep in mind there's a lot of material here that I did want to give you a sense for, just because we've been able to do so much, and there's so many features of Plone that, as you'll see, I don't think a lot of people here are even aware of. So here it goes. Okay, so what have we done here with Plone? At UW Oshkosh, we started with Plone. When I first started looking at it in 2003, it was version 1, and we started building the site for WIDA, which is an educational English limited learners website for teachers in multiple states. And so that project, it was the genesis for the use of Plone at Oshkosh, primarily initially for Department of Public Instruction, but as a result of the work we did on that project, it seemed like it would be a very good fit for the university because we were using Dreamweaver and Contribute at the time. And so as you can see, there's been a progression over the years of the versions of Plone, and I just wanted to give you a sense for how Plone has not remained static, and in fact, it's continued to evolve significantly. As you know, in 2008, the home site went live with IMC's driving the process and the college sites and so on. But in the 5 years since, we've had tremendous leaps in the functionality in Plone, speed improvements, user interface improvements, all sorts of functionality that we're just starting to get to roll out on campus this year. I wanted to give you this screenshot of a map showing, I guess, an attempt really to classify or categorize different content technologies. And if you look in the bottom, if I can find my mouse, hey, I don't get a mouse. Okay, bottom left corner, you can see Plone and Drupal next to it. And Plone, what these lines represent are different types of functionality for these various content technologies, and Plone is the only open source content management system that's at the intersection of 3 of these lines. And the 3 lines, as you can look in the legend, it's web content and experience management, it's also portals and content integration, and collaboration and social software. And so those 3 lines converge at Plone, and that's something that's unique to open source systems. And you can see, as I said, Drupal in the left corner, bottom left corner, and WordPress is sort of on the right, a little bit higher up. And there's we were looking at Ectron, and Ectron is on one line, a blue line, right next to the WordPress thing. I wish I had a pointer. There's no pointer for this thing? Yes. So Real Story Group is a technology overview sort of recommendation company. They're basically consultants like I'm trying to remember something, not O'Reilly Group, but there's other organizations that basically do analysis for technology. So, why do I think Plone is a good fit for the university here? Essentially, we looked at the requirements. We built a set of requirements that we felt the university needed to have in a content management system, and Plone satisfies the vast majority of those, and I'd say all the major requirements. Out of the box, it provides rich, complex functionality, which obviously we'll look at in more detail, which is in relative to other systems which require a lot of plugins. Obviously, there's a lot of advantages to having this happen out of the box. And as I have mentioned repeatedly, we have 10 years of experience using Plone, not just training users to use Plone, but also in learning all the features that can work to the advantage of the different units that need a website, and all the different kinds of websites that we have built, in addition to our ability to customize the functionality and very importantly, but maybe not visibly to users on campus, is our ability, our experience of having developed processes and procedures for tuning and deploying Plone in a way that's robust and that scales for all the users we have on campus and can basically satisfy the requirements of the people here. And that's something that when we look at other systems, no matter which system we do look at, if we were to transition away from Plone, there would be that learning curve as well of learning, okay, we know this feature is in the product, we know that hosting system is going to work, but there are always gotchas. And those gotchas are things that we've figured out over the years, and we've solved them, we've worked around them, or we've solved the problems. So those are very important things that users just don't see behind the scenes. And as we'll see a little bit later, we have almost 300 sites, and there's a slide later which will show at least 1,000 users have gone through Plone training on campus. And again, this is over not the full 10 years, but more like over the last 3 years. Plone obviously is an open source, free and open source software package, so there's zero licensing cost, there's zero, I'd say there's zero support costs, although obviously we need to staff a team here, we need to do training, we need to do support, but those things, if we didn't try to do those things in-house, we would have to pay somebody to do those things. So that's why, I mean, obviously it's a little bit of a parenthetical expression, cost being zero for Plone, yes, up front. Ease of use, we'll talk about some of those features in more detail. As I said, we've also been able to exploit a lot of the features in Plone to develop sites that just range from public, what I call informational dissemination sites, down through collaborative group sites, down to intranets, as well as workflows. And so also when you look at the different range of sites we have on campus, I'd say kudos to IMC for the designs that they've come up with and for their ability to customize all the sites that they have rolled out. And I'd like to argue that those things have been made possible in large part because of the flexibility of theming Plone. And a big part of a system that we run on campus obviously is the security and our ability to not have to worry about staying up late at night thinking that somebody's hacking into our systems and either stealing our data or disfiguring our sites. And that's something that Plone has given us a lot of peace of mind with. Again, some of the things that we have in Plone that really make it a very powerful system is our ability as well to delegate permissions and roles. So if we look at the scalability of supporting a website or a web presence for an entire campus like ours, clearly one person or one group of people can't manage updating or creating all of the content. And so along with guidelines, brand guidelines, content writing guidelines, and editors, we have the ability to delegate permissions for editing and reviewing and publishing. And as some of you know, the College of Education, for example, maintains very, very tight control over who can publish a page, basically 2 people in the College of Education. And they really like it that way because they want to maintain absolute standards on what gets published. However, I'd argue that there's a cost to that. But Plone gives us that flexibility, that range of being able to say individuals can publish or only one individual can publish. Core features of Plone that just come out of the box, a search engine with live search results. And I know I've watched people use the search box in Plone sites and they'll type something and immediately hit enter. And I say, hold on a second. If you wait half a second, you'll see the results drop down for you. You don't even have to click. Just little things like that that I've watched over the years, people just don't know. A sitemap that's part of a Plone site. You don't have to create your own sitemap. You don't have to manage it. All of these things are generated for you automatically. A recently modified list of content on your site. I mean, what a great way to highlight for somebody who comes to your site periodically, hey, look at all these new things that have been published on our site. That's done for you automatically. We've seen, I think it was with WordPress, and I think it's also the case with Drupal, that when you create a new page in one of those systems, you have to manually go in and modify what that URL is going to look like. because a lot of, I think Drupal, for example, has a weird URL structure that says /p question mark p equals and then some number. Well, that's not very Google friendly. Whereas if you look at when you generate a new page in Plone or a new folder structure, those Google friendly URLs are automatically created for you. There's nothing for you to do. Similarly, there's this built-in HTML structure that Plone generates that is Google or search engine friendly. So if you were to Google for, say, Plone projects, you probably find the Plone site that we use to track our Plone work here is probably, I think it's the first search result. And the HTML structure that Plone generates, Google interprets that correctly and sees the sections of a site automatically for you. Again, there's nothing you have to do. If you make a Plone site and you add content to it, Google is going to find it very easily and is going to understand it. Other features of Plone that have been very important historically are accessibility compliance. If you make a website, say like at Penn State, and you don't have accessibility compliance standards, you are going to get sued. And this is something that, and I'll talk about it a little bit later too, different universities that use Plone have said that one of the big reasons why they use Plone is for accessibility compliance. And they all point to Penn State, which ironically is one of the places where Plone was basically launched out of in a big way for education. And yet, I don't believe it was their Plone sites that got them in trouble. It was other sites. So accessibility compliance, really key feature, I'd say, for Plone. Section 508 ADA compliance, WCAG 2.0. And that last feature I wanted to point out too is the automatic handling of links. So here's a feature that people don't know about in a Plone site. You make a Plone page and you decide to move it. If somebody's got that original location bookmarked, Plone will automatically take them to the new location. Now that's a nice feature because you don't need to worry about it. You could take a website, move content all over the place, somebody goes to that old URL, they're going to get taken to the correct place. This is something that when I first realized this, I was going, wow, I don't need to worry about broken links. So again, not very visible features, but they're part of Plone. I did want to mention here in terms of security that Plone has had no successful, at least no known successful attacks, and there are organizations that are very aware of security issues like the FBI and the CIA that use Plone specifically because it is not easily hacked. Other universities, as I'll mention later, have decided to stay away from PHP-based systems because those things are more vulnerable. PHP is more vulnerable, SQL is more vulnerable. Python does not use either of those technologies. Some numbers to throw at you in terms of from the National Vulnerabilities Database. In the year ending 2013, so current numbers going back to 2006, you can see Plone has had 21 vulnerabilities, but none in the last 2 years. Drupal, Joomla, and WordPress have had hundreds. And the reason why, as a system administrator, among the many things that I do, I would say this is a key feature of any enterprise system, that we do not have to dedicate a full-time staff member solely to apply patches and fixes. When I ran a Drupal site for 1 year, I had to drop everything I was doing about 9 times in order to patch either PHP, MySQL, or Drupal itself, or a key plugin for Drupal. And so that's the sort of thing that in the 1 year I was running a Drupal site, I realized that I just do not want to run one for a large organization just because of the numbers of patches I had to apply. And while, of course, you're applying one of those patches, your users are locked out, particularly for Drupal. I know this because I actually did this. And that pie chart there just kind of gives you a sense, relatively speaking, of the kinds of vulnerabilities there are in other systems, and Plone is that little blue sliver. So I did want to talk about our deployment strategy at the university here because, again, this is something that we've developed, I'd say, organically. Some might say haphazardly, but it speaks to some of the concerns that Sean has raised about the ways that we've deployed Plone here, that it's harder for IMC to make a change in a theme and have it update everywhere in every site on campus. And so that's a result of the deployment strategy we've had to use here. We've developed it because it was based on the number of people we had available. It was based on the speed with which we had to deploy sites. It's based not on the technology's limitations, but based on our limitations here in terms of resourcing and staffing. And so every time a new version of Plone comes out and we filled one of our containers, we build a new container. Why is that good? Because it gives new sites the new functionality. When people are clamoring for the latest version of Plone because there's a new aspect of some new feature of it that they really, really feel is very important for their ability to deliver a good website, we can give them that flexibility and deploy a new version of Plone. So as some of you know, we've deployed version 4.3 of Plone. Many sites, well, several sites so far this year are built on it. So the USP, Grad Studies, Provost site, there's a number of other sites that are less visible. But that's the kind of flexibility we have. We don't have to drag kicking and screaming all of the, well, 200 Plone sites or more back up to the current version of Plone if there's nothing wrong with those sites. So again, this is something that speaks to more the skeleton-sized crew that we've had that's been able to maintain this many sites on campus. And so that's my excuse. We can do upgrades of technology on demand. As some of you know, the Provost site was recently upgraded to 4.3 of Plone from 3 point something. And that was something that they really felt, the Provost office felt that it really wanted fairly quickly, and we were able to do that. The technology upgrade itself took us 2 days to import the content from the old site. And then, as you'll see, if you haven't already seen the Provost site, it applies the new theme from the campus, the new campus theme. It's got better responsive design. So those things took more time. There's been some content reorganization that the Provost office asked for or basically wanted to proceed with before going live. So upgrades on demand, we can do that. So what do we do with Plone sites? Somebody asks us for a new Plone site. We can provision it if we're at our desk in about 30 seconds. Integration for authentication, as you know, we authenticate with NetID. There are other authentication solutions out there for Plone that have been in wide-scale use, so we can authenticate with Apache, we can authenticate with CAS, we can authenticate with Shibboleth. Why haven't we done that here? Because of the many things that we're trying to do, that was just not a high priority, but those things are possible. You can also integrate Windows desktops. Using Enfold Desktop, we can integrate those with Windows authentication, so basically single sign-on for Windows desktops. Again, why haven't we done that? Because the need wasn't there. The need was not basically a high priority. Also, again, back to the number of resources that we have on campus, we can't run everything at the same speed, unfortunately. In terms of performance and scale, Plone 4.3 is much faster. Plone 4 is much faster than Plone 3. I remember distinctly the reaction David Hippets had here from the library when he finally got a Plone 4.3 server going, and he said something like, "Holy, this is fast." And that is pretty much the case. I mean, if you look at the servers that we're running, and this is not to diss anybody for the server hardware that we have still, but we're running hardware that's 5 or 6 years old, and the servers that we have nowadays, we're about to get 2 new servers. They're spectacularly fast, but if you run Plone 4 on one of those old servers, it runs really quickly. Some of the aspects of enterprise provisioning that we could provide that we haven't had to yet are ZOP replication services, which is a free way of replicating entire Plone containers. Static deployment, where we can generate static HTML and serve everything out of one single Apache very quickly if it ever came down to, say, a kind of contingency plan where our network traffic got saturated. We could do things like that. Also integration with CDNs, content data networks. I think it's content data networks. For example, thank you, content delivery networks. So again, my example of the FBI, which uses CDNs to serve content out locally to users. Why don't we use those things? Because our network traffic doesn't seem to call for it. Also, it costs money. But those deployment solutions are there for us using Plone. So over the years, again, many times we'll get questions from people like, can Plone do something? And we always say, please ask us. We'd love to hear your questions. That's the way we can decide what sort of features out there people really want based on the numbers. And so informally, we develop a sense for what people are asking for. And if it isn't in the box, and often it is already in the box, we'll have people ask us to do something, and we'll say, well, you can do that with a Plone collection, for example. If it's not in a box, chances are there's an add-on, and so we can go look for those for you. We can evaluate the different add-ons. So again, Plone out of the box is a full CMS, but I'm not saying that Plone is a perfect CMS or that Plone does everything. But if there is an add-on, if there is a thing that people have been using out there or want to use, there's probably an add-on for it for Plone as well. The other thing that we have done is, if there isn't a good add-on, we'll build one. And we've hired students. I think I counted about 5 interns over the years who have done stellar jobs writing new functionality for Plone that then didn't just get used here, but got turned around and made open source for other campuses around the world to use. And so I just kind of threw out some of the things that we have built down there using basically custom functionality that in some cases we've built into products. And the one I did want to highlight in particular is the time slot product, which some of you may know of as a sign-up sheet for, essentially it was built for an instructor who wanted to put a sign-up sheet on the door of her office to let students come in and say, I want to meet at 8:15 this day or that day. Well, that was the primary use case, but then the secondary use case was Michelle Loker's training classes, where she wanted a way outside of Access to track how many people were going to come to her classes. And so I hired Marshall Scorchio to build that product. And so what it does is it makes you fill out essentially a list of the days that your sign-up sheet is good for and the number of hours, the slots in the day, and then people sign in and they say, I want to pick this time, and they get an email confirmation. They can cancel their slot. The manager of the sign-up sheet can download a CSV showing who's in it. There's a queuing system as well, so if there's a maximum of 10 in a class, people can be put onto a waiting list and will get bumped into the real class if someone cancels. I mean, all of this is done through a Plone product that we wrote here that's in international use, and I've gotten patches or contributions for internationalization, so translations from Germany and I think South America, I think Italy as well. TimeSlot is used in North Carolina as DPI. It's used in Canada as well. So those are examples of what happens when somebody asks, can Plone do X? I did want to give you a little bit more detail about the numbers of people on this campus who have been trained to use Plone, and these are the people that that basically Michelle and Jamie have served with training classes. So 300 or so since August of 2010 just in Plone training classes. Another 100 or so that Michelle estimates were one-on-one or department trainings or joint sessions with IMC. And then we're counting the views of the Plone training videos that we have on our website. So again, those are resources that we've made available and we've developed in-house. So they're customized for our particular audiences here. And we can do more. We'd like to do more. An example of our doing more is what John Wren here and Luke Scorchio have done in rolling out forms and workflow training. And these are the departments. This is the list of departments and units that they've either provided demos for or training for, and the forms that have been built as a result of those trainings. So it's been an extensive list. And again, I'd like to do more. There's site owner training I'd like to be able to roll out too. Tips and tricks. We did do a little bit of that in Plone 101, but I'd like to continue doing it on a more regular basis. So some of the untapped power that's in everybody's Plone site right now are things that I thought you might want to see because I believe it was in the Electron demo, when the effective date and expiry date for content was demonstrated, I saw a lot of people jotting down notes, and I thought, hey, this is in Plone. So let me just switch over to a Plone site, and I'll talk to you about that. Also, things that are in every single Plone site on campus are news items and events. And those are things that I don't think a lot of us use those well enough. I know that on campus we've had an initiative to try to come up with a event centralization, publishing, distribution system that I think to a significant extent we could build using the existing Plone sites that we have right now, using some of these features. Plone also has RSS feeds, so you can repurpose content between different sites. And so it's a very simplistic way of repurposing content, but it can do the trick. It can also be extended. So let me just flip over to demo some of that. All right, so I have, yes, okay. So I did want to show you expiry content, expiry dates and effective dates. So this is a basic Plone site. I think you've all seen this essential, the front part of the editing for a page. And here's the dates. If you go into here, you can specify a date when you'd like the piece of content to be visible. So I'll say November 21st. And if I save it now, it's actually not behaving correctly. This is because it's a default page. Can you see that the welcome page isn't listed there? That's because the effective date hasn't been reached yet. So that's, let me go back to editing the thing. That's the welcome page here. If I edit it back, I'll just say October 21st. And then I'll reload this page. And now you can see it listed there. Those expiry dates and effective dates are things that I personally have only told anybody about on a Plone surveys page, because when different units wanted to generate a survey and have it visible only for 30 days or 90 days, we could easily expire the things from the site and just not have them clutter up the navigation. And so that was the one use case I thought was a clear, useful application of the effective date and the expiry dates for Plone content. And those dates are available on every single piece of Plone content. And the theme you'll hear me talk about here is, with the untapped power in Plone, is that we have such a range of experience and I guess I'd say interest in the features of Plone. We have people who are not interested in even attending Plone training because they just don't feel it's worth their time, and yet clearly they could benefit a lot from some of these features, the basic features of Plone. And then there's people who, like Amy Breckeisen from the Provost's office, who you show them a feature and they'll just go crazy. They'll go, wow, I can really use that, and they can see it. You can see the light in their eyes when you talk to them about some of these features. So we have this huge range on campus, from people who are just not interested, people who just want to publish a page and get it done and get it over with, and people who really see the value in being able to use some of these features. Some of the things I talked about too were news and events, and on this site we don't have any news published right now, but I will go over here. Sorry. Make a new news item. So this is a Plone news event. And again, here, if I reload the page, it's not visible because, whoops, because it's still in the private state. And now I will publish it. So now it's been published, and did you notice this news portlet appeared? So again, this is one of the things that Plone does for you automatically that you just don't even have to deal with, that these portlets will appear if there's content that's relevant to show, and they won't appear if there's no content that's necessary to show. So if I go back to this page and I reload, you can see now the published news item is visible. These news items are also available as RSS feeds. If you click on the news collection, you can see multiple news items in reverse chronological order. And so the ones that, and so again, something that you don't have to handle yourself. You don't have to worry about hiding a news item if it's too old. Plone will do it for you automatically. Similarly, if we were to look at events, which are similar to news items, but they appear in a calendar, and some of you, I think, have already seen this on the intranet as well. We can set a date and a time. We can say D301. Next. We can list attendees. By user ID here, we can assign a URL. So here's an event, and we'll publish it. If we go back to this page, now we see an events portlet. Again, an upcoming events portlet. Very handy because when tomorrow rolls around, this item, this event will not show in the upcoming events portlet. I know these seem like simple features, but to me, there's such a powerful way of taking what's happening on campus and bringing it to life online. It's a way of advertising the activity that every day that we go through, the knowledge that we generate, the events that we have, new things that are happening on campus, and we could use this feature in Plone alone to broadcast to the world what is happening on this campus, a way to convince taxpayers that we are doing a good thing with their money. We're not just kind of sitting around drinking coffee or something. But to me, these are very simple features of Plone that in our existing sites we should be using more of. I mentioned the search as well before, and so some of the things that we can do here are like search for the word demo. You can see the live search result pop down. If you hit enter, you can again see more. You can filter the results, and you can say here, I just want the items in the last day or the last week or so on. You can also see where on the site they are. This is a enhanced search that came out in Plone 4.2. There are other things too here. So for example, if I were to make a collection, so some of you have already heard me say collections. What are collections? They're basically canned queries of content on your site. So these demo things. So what this will do is it will pull out from the site anything that matches the criteria that I define. So if here, for example, I want to say I want to find anything on the site that contains the word demo. I don't know if you saw that. Let me do it again. So I just said I'm going to pick a criterion to be searchable text, and I'm going to say it contains, the item has to contain a string, and I'm going to say demo. And you can see a preview, an immediate preview of the search results right in here. And then I can also sort. Probably I will sort by effective date, which is publication date, and I'll say in reverse order. And then I'll say these. You can specify search limits. And so I will now publish this. And now I'll go back to here. If I click on demo things, you can see this search result dynamically generated. So for example, I'll go back here and I'll make a new, no, let's make a new page. I'll make a new folder. And I'll publish it. And I'll go back here. Did you see that? My demo folder just appeared there. So again, apparently not an exciting feature, but this is such a powerful way of highlighting content on your site that's relevant to particular kinds of audiences. So on some sites on campus, we have used keyword tagging to say that this is for students, or this is a form, or this is for faculty, or this is for staff. And then we've built collections that highlight all of the things on the site that are for faculty, or all of the things that are for students, or forms, all forms. And so this is such a brilliant way of reusing content from anywhere on the site and categorizing it, presenting it in a way that's customized for a particular purpose. I will also just touch on working copy support, because this is something. Am I doing okay for time? No, not really. Okay, I'm sorry. I could talk about this for hours and hours. Let me just demo for you working copy support, and I will do it. Actually, sorry. If you look at this, let me see. A welcome to Plone page. This page now is published. Now, it happens that we've been asked several times. College of Education has a front page that it publishes, and clearly that goes through a review process. Only 1 or 2 people in the College of Education can approve the publishing of that page, but there's a typo on that page, and so rather than make the people who can publish that page have to make the typo fix, correct the typo, what you can do is turn on what's called working copy support in Plone, and that allows somebody who's got editing permission but not necessarily publishing permission to check out a copy of the page, edit that copy, submit it back for review and approval, and if it's approved, it replaces the published page. In other words, you don't have to unpublish a page, edit the thing in a hurry, and republish the thing. You can keep a copy of it, work on the copy, and when you're done, submit it again for review. So what I'll show you is this page is published. So normally, if you didn't have manager permission on this, you couldn't edit the page. I can, because I'm a manager here. But the way you do it is you check out a copy of it. And so now this is a working copy of Welcome to Plone, made by and so. And now I can edit the thing. If you look at the URL, you can see it's a copy of front page. And if I edit it, so now let's view the changes. Oh, look, it says Welcome to Plone was crossed out with Welcome to Drupal. And if I go back, I can now check it in because I'm a manager, or I can say I'm going to cancel it out. If I didn't have publishing permissions, it would be submit for approval. So this is a feature that's in every single Plone site since, I don't know, 2.5, and it's a feature that very few people know about. And again, why do they not know about it? Because the training that we give people is a very basic 90-minute training session that covers how to log in, how to edit a page, how to add a page, how to add a folder, and it just doesn't even scratch the surface of the power of Plone. In every single website on this campus, there are a lot of features like this that I would love to tell more people about. But again, it's that challenge of how much do those people really care to learn, and how do we identify the people who want to exploit those features. Okay, I need to move on. Sorry for the beyond. Okay, so content creator features, I've talked about some of these before. WYSIWYG, the new TinyMCE editor in Plone 4.3. TinyMCE is the same editor that's used in WordPress and Drupal, so it's got some customizations that are specific to Plone. If you look at, one of the things that we saw the other day in the WordPress demo was the difficulty of uploading files or images into a particular Plone site. And here I'm going to say I'm going to add an image here. And so this is the image browser, or actually it's not just an image browser, sorry. Is it an image? Yes. I don't have an image on this site, so I'm going to upload one. Just use the Hawaii. And now I'm picking that one. I can say what I want the description to be here. I can say what size I want, so Plone generates all of these different sizes automatically when you upload an image. So I'm going to say here it's going to be a mini, and I can say open it in a new window, and I'll say OK. And that doesn't look very good. There we go. Oops. Sorry. So we had a few years ago, we had a request to allow the editing of photos directly in Plone, and so that's something that we can do as well. Where's the Hawaii picture? Here it is. Some basic things right out of the box are transforms, so you can do things like you can flip it upside down, for example. There's actually a more sophisticated add-on that Nathan Van Giem wrote here that lets you do the same thing. Okay, this is not working. All right, moving on. Okay, so easy linking to content that's on your site. I'll show you a little bit more dynamic layout tool that is in Plone. Pasting from Word, undo. These are features that when you're editing a lot of content and you make a mistake, you can undo easily. There are things that we can undo for you, like if you deleted a whole folder in a Plone site, we can undo those things for you. These are benefits of the object database that Plone uses behind the scenes. As a content editor, you can do, there's automatic versioning of Plone pages, and you can compare old versions that have been saved. You can revert back to old versions. There's automatic locking of pages or any item content when you're someone's trying to edit something, you're prevented, or at least you're warned about not overwriting those changes. You can add comments when you're saving a page. So back to the Plone site here, if I were to edit this page some more, I can say, oh, this is locked. Let me check it in. Sorry, this is published. Let me do this one. As I edit something here, I can put in a change note. And how does this help you? Well, when you're looking at the version history, you can see these comments show up here. Again, features that are very useful in particular cases when somebody has a lot of content editors on a site. But if you do have a lot of content editors and you want to know who made this change, people can track who it was who made the change. You can track when it was made. You can revert back. You can do comparisons with old versions, and you can revert. Mass content changes, you can do mass publication, mass renaming, mass deletion, moving content around on a site. As a site administrator, so again, this is something that fewer people on campus are going to have to deal with, but the way the security works in Plone allows you to create groups arbitrarily, assign people to groups, assign roles and permissions to different groups. You can do a lot of slicing and dicing on this. This is about as powerful as PeopleSoft security, certainly in terms of flexibility. And some of the things that I'll show you next are Placeable workflow, which is a way that we've built intranet functionality in existing sites. And so this is yet another feature of Plone that we could use more of. We just need a way to get it in front of the people who care about these particular applications. So if I look at Placeable workflow, that seemed like a useful place to do it. If you look at this faculty and staff page, this is right now, this has the default workflow for it. And in fact, it looks like they don't have their intranet here. Oh, here it is. Sorry, this is their intranet. This is the intranet site or the intranet folder of the history department. And you can see up here their state is private. But what it does is it uses an intranet workflow in this folder and below so that you can designate entire sections of a site to have a different kind of privacy setting versus the remainder of the site. And so you can do this on any piece of content in a Plone site. And that's one of the features that we've used for our workflow applications. When a student submits an application for something, you don't necessarily want them to keep being able to edit the thing as it's going through a review process. And so we disable the editing permissions using Placeable workflow in that portion of the site. I've talked about content distribution using news and events portlets, news and events and RSS. I'll show you momentarily the layout engine for Plone that lets you reuse content across your site. And some of you may have seen at the Plone Symposium, 6 Feet Up developed something called Push Hub for UCLA, and it's open source. This is a tool that lets you take a piece of content written, say centrally, by administration to say this is the number of, well, I won't use the enrollment, but if you've got a piece of content that you would like other people on other sites on your campus to be able to reuse, you can push that out with Push Hub, and then you can actually retract it with Push Hub as well. So that's something sort of as an add-on to Plone that we can do as well. Let me show you. Oh, sorry, I'm finding it. I have a lot of sites open here. Okay, so this is a copy of the Provo site that I have on my computer here, and it's a copy from I think last week. And one of the things that we talked about, Brian and I had talked about, is to provide different kinds of layouts, and Sean had asked if this was possible as well. Provide different kinds of layouts for different types of landing pages, for example. So if you want a page that people just land on and see a carousel or a big image and maybe some highlighted content from other parts of your site, you can do that. If you want 2 columns, you can build it and let people use that 2-column layout. If you want 3 rows and the second row and the third row have 2 columns, you can do that. So let me show you how. Right. Oh, did you see Canada invades the US? All right. So here you can choose initially from different kinds of layouts. Layout A, B, C. I mean, you can give more meaningful names to these things. I'm going to start out with an empty layout. And so this is an empty layout. I'm going to, as somebody who's got full editing permissions on this site, I can control this layout. But you don't necessarily have to give everybody on your site this kind of permission. I'm going to add a couple of rows. Oh, that was a row within a row. Sorry, I didn't mean that. Actually, that's too many rows. Okay, I got 4 rows. I would like to make a couple of columns there. Where'd the column go? All right, and here I'm going to adjust the size a little bit. Oop, that didn't work. All right. And then I'm going to put in, I think, let's see, rich text here, content body here, maybe a list. This is going to look really ugly. I'm sorry. I'll stop there. Then you can save the layout, and you can export it. You can say, yeah. Okay. All right. So you've built a layout, and now you're going to let other people on your site use it. And so what they would be able to do is make a new cover page with a particular layout. It would appear in that drop-down list where it says layout A, B, C, and empty. there is now a new one with Kim's layout. And then they can compose it. So when they compose it, they can add content from this site. What I'm going to do in this one, this is the content reuse tile, and so I'm going to take this Henson Award thing. So that's a page elsewhere on the site. Here, let's see, I'm going to add an image. Do I have an image? I guess I'll drag this one in here. Oh, no, sorry, this is the image, it's a tile. All right, and this one is, I think this is rich text. And hit save. And now I can just hit view, and you can see, well, that there's all sorts of controls on these tiles. You can change the size of the images. You can put banners in. You can put carousels in. You drag and drop images into your carousel. It'll just render a carousel for you. That's like the easy slider that we have on a lot of sites. This comes from the Edward Penson Faculty Award. You can edit that page, if I could find it. I don't know where it is. If you edit that page and save it, that is reflected here. So this is content reuse with dynamic layout. It's called Cover. This is actually moving into Plone 5 core. And so Plone 5 is being worked on right now. In fact, they're in Arnhem in the Netherlands right now sprinting for this.
So that product is an add-on currently in 4.3?
Yes. Yeah, that was running 4.3. That's the Provost site, or a copy of the Provost site. Back to, it's just, again, the theme again is going to be, why don't we use that on all our sites yet? Because we want to learn how to use the thing right. We want to make sure there's no bugs in it. This is part of evaluating add-ons. That particular add-on we don't have a lot of worries about because that is going into Plone core. And so that is going to be maintained as part of all of the functionality that's just maintained with full regression testing and all that. So we can be pretty certain that there aren't going to be orphaning issues with that kind of functionality. So I've shown you Cover. I could talk about Diazo just very quickly. This is the theming tool that we have begun using a little bit. Well, we've been learning how to use it more. But we actually, sorry, there are a couple of sites where we have deployed it. So let me find them. I'm going to demo you this on this site. Okay, this is my air and space theme. This is Diazo. So okay, so the story with Plone theming is that until now it's been painful. If you want to theme a Plone site, you've got to learn the innards of Plone. You have to know which part of Plone to use to customize a particular thing on the page. Diazo has been out for 2 years, 3 years, actually since Marshall has been around, so it's longer than that. And now it's in Plone core. So it ships with Plone, it's part of Plone, it's being widely used by universities now. It can do Diazo can support responsive designs as well for mobile devices. What is Diazo? It's a new way of theming Plone sites. So if you know how to code HTML, if you know how to code JavaScript, if you know how to code CSS, you can build a Plone theme. You don't need to learn the innards of Plone. You almost don't even have to go into the ZOAP management interface, which is sort of this arcane underlying layer for Plone. You don't need to know any of that stuff. And so I was talking to Chris Thomas at SMEAL, College of Business at Penn State, and he said that they've rolled out Diazo with responsive design, so for their new SMEAL college sites. And one particular thing that he highlighted for me was that he had a particular kind of collapsing accordion menu widget that he wanted to use in their site, and he has a really good JavaScript coder who doesn't know Plone, and he gave it to that guy and said, could you just please add this to the theme? And it took about an hour, and it was integrated into the theme. And so that's the kind of power that distinguishes Diazo from the old style of theming Plone sites. Here is the control panel showing you the different themes that have been uploaded into this particular site. and so the air and space one is the active one. I can show you how you can modify a theme live in here. This is an in the site editor live, so if you make changes in here, they apply to the site live. You don't need to restart the Plone site, you don't need to install the product, you don't need to restart your server or anything like that. And you can see all of the assets that are part of the theme just go into here. You define with HTML, okay, so you define with HTML and CSS what your theme looks like. There's nothing you need to know about the Plone site here, except some IDs of the different things on the site that you want to expose through your theme. And there are some rules here that let you specify that this part of the Plone site should be displayed in this part of the theme. So for example, this is the HTML, the raw HTML on the theme, and this is Plone unthemed, and so you can map different parts of the site. So I can say this title should appear in, well, I'm just going to pick something here, and then you can create a rule. Somewhere here, sorry, there's a create rule button. Basically, it's a WYSIWYG editor for your Plone theme, and again, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I can activate this one for you. So if you've got a gallery of themes, you can activate and deactivate your themes at the click of a button. Other aspects of Diazo that we've talked about with Sean are that these Diazo themes can be hosted on a central server. So if you look at the URLs for, where is it? You can specify somewhere in here, sorry, yes, I think it's this prefix path. You can specify a central server where your theme files are hosted from, and so if you update those theme files, every site that you have using those central themes will get updated instantly. So I think that's, hopefully an answer to the question of how do we take 100 sites that are themed, that are supposed to be themed consistently, and update all the footers in one shot, and that is, I think, a good answer to that. I've got to skip on. We've integrated Plone with Solr search engine. We've done, the library has been the leader here in that respect. There are integrations possible with Salesforce, there are integrations possible with analytics engines. We can do a lot, and I'd love the opportunity to explore those needs further. Layout designer I showed you. Noteworthy sites at UWO. Okay, so I will give Brian some credit here. This is Grace Lim's website where she highlights a lot of the work that she's done, raising awareness of some of the great things our students have been doing here. And the key feature I wanted to tell you about this site is the automation that Brian built into this site. Without, as you know, Brian is not a coder. Lord help us. And he built it with standard Plone features. Plone forms, a little bit of scripting, which he got a lot of help with, and some collections. And the news features that are part of Plone, the event features that are part of Plone, the the sliders that you see, the image uploads, those are basic features of Plone that he was able to exploit in a way that makes Grace, I think she's very happy with it. What she does is she can have her students upload a news, basically a write-up of something with an image attached, and the site just automatically goes behind the scenes and creates all these folder structures and generates these slideshows based on keywords that are automatically attached to the news stories. So I don't know my way around this site, so I can't show you a whole lot more about it, and I don't think we're going to have enough time. But this is an example of the kinds of automation and power in basic Plone sites. We have this searchable database that I built for Cadet, which is a Solr search engine that's displaying records from a Microsoft SQL database. And this is a live system that lets people search for their certification and prove that they were trained for first aid, for example, in a nursing home. This is the literary journalism studies site where when you log into this site and you've got permissions, you can upload bibliographic references So with this search form, you can find bibliographic references associated relevant to this discipline, and so these things, this is a screenshot, so I won't click through on it, but these are all downloadable. The whole thing's exportable. This is Plone with Diazo theming, because we were asked to make it look like the IAJLS website that's hosted in Toronto. But it's Plone with Diazo theming, and it took me maybe about 10 minutes to copy the theme over from, I think it's a WordPress or a Drupal site, I can't remember, and just apply it to a Plone site with Solar Search Engine. College of Business has its intranet in here, and well, I guess I won't say a whole lot more other than a lot of the features in Plone that are relevant to displaying content and content discovery are being used on this intranet and others on campus. So if somebody's in the accounting department, all the information relevant to the accounting department can be made visible to the person. And of course, the Academic Affairs, the Provost site, which also has a responsive theme, which I'll talk about. Filariasis, this is a site for ordering parasites. It's run for an NIH grant out of the biology department here. This is something that has an online ordering system with online reporting, basically using collections and data export scripts that we wrote, that a student of ours wrote, and Plone Form Gen. The library site, which, as David was telling me, incorporates about 48 different data feeds. So this is just to tell you about, well, the library spends a lot of time dealing with the analysis of user interactions with their site, and so I think they take a tremendous amount of care in how users work with their site, and they also have been able to use the power of Plone to integrate with other data sources. It's a great showcase, I think, for Python and Plone and XML and JavaScript integration that is possible with a Plone site. Some of you have heard us talk about the Wisconsin Bestiary site, which is for classroom instruction support, where students can upload photos and indicate where they found a particular animal in the state. And this is going to be opened up to more states as well. There's an app that's been written as well to submit the photos with GPS coordinates and so on directly to the website. All right, some of the features of Plone that we have used that go beyond external communication dissemination sites are these workflows, which are online forms and that multi-state approval process that we can build for people using through the web tools. And so this is just a list of the different units on campus who have used forms and workflow extensively, often through, mostly through the work of John Wren and Luke Scorchio, who have done the majority of this training. And so I wanted to point out that these tools, these forms and workflows were not built necessarily by, the vast majority were not built by us, they were built by business units themselves. The people who know their processes have been able to build forms through drag and drop, design workflows through clicking through a web page, and deploy these things with collections and permissions that are relevant to different kinds of users on their site to convert paper processes to online processes. And in the process of doing that, saving a lot of money to different units on campus. So OIE has a study abroad application workflow, which we conservatively estimate over the last 5 years has saved about $170,000, probably closer to $200,000. This is the estimate from Genegraph. And so she's doubling down on this and is continuing the automation, the full automation of her unit by taking Plone workflow features and developing a program database, a program management database, a program proposal and management review database that then spits out a website, program guide, plus brochures and workflow. So that's an example, I think a really good example of how Plone goes beyond just publishing a page and folders and some images. It can be used to really automate a business. This is what that form looks like. This is an old version of Plone. Plus, this is early theming. Online bulletins, as you know, we have the undergrad and the graduate bulletins available in Plone, so there's this workflow that allows collaborative editing by, say, department chairs who want to provide edits to information relevant to their department, and it gets reviewed by the registrar and then published. There's extensive use is made of version history and version comparisons to decide whether or not a revision should be published. But that's what the registrar's office and the grad studies office have used. And as some of you know, the faculty handbook is going to be using a similar workflow, is going to be online as well, to replace the massive Word document that I think we've been using for the last many years. This is an example of the kinds of mobile support that we have now in the 4.3 sites. So USP works like this on a mobile device. Grad Studies, the Provost site as well. And what we hope to be able to do is take this particular responsive feature set that was essentially, we were prodded into doing it correctly by Sean, and basically roll that out to all the existing 4.3 sites, so going backwards plus going forward. So all new sites built in this 4.3 theme will have these mobile features built right into them. As many of you know, there's a lot of universities around the country and around the world who use Plone, and I did want to mention a couple of things from each one of them. I did ask them for testimonials, and I will provide them in full form, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things here from UCLA. And one of the big things they've decided is the security of Plone and how they don't have to dedicate a lot of resources to managing security patches, but also they particularly had cited that their marketing and communications team were very happy with the way that they were going to customize Plone sites to allow that kind of branding to be exploited. Penn State, as you know, is the home of WebLion, which has kind of changed a lot in the last couple of years with retirements. But Penn State's different colleges continue to use Plone, and they have looked at a number of other systems just in case, but by and large what they've come to understand is this particular quote I wanted to take and highlight, that they're extremely happy with Plone, and they have not seen anything out there that is worth justifying a migration. Together, Smeal and Liberal Arts at PSU represent 160 sites, so smaller than what we have, less than what we have. But one of their big things was not running any PHP on their servers. Louisville, I wanted to mention this. This is an example where we had seen how Louisville had deployed their Plone sites in one really, really large container. And we decided that we didn't really want to do it that way. But Louisville has moved slightly away from that model, and they have something like 450 sites. I don't intend for you to read all of that, but accessibility is a big part of why they're very happy with Plone. They also have been able to maintain brand standards across many different websites. So again, something similar to what we've been doing here. And then one of the things that they particularly like is in the last couple of years, in particular with Plone version 4 and now 4.3 and the ongoing work with Plone 5, is the acceleration, or what seems to be a greater number of core code committers to the Plone project. And so if we look on our campus alone, I think we have 5 Plone core committers. So I'm one, John's one, Brian, David, I think, is there someone else right here? Sort of trying to think who else. And so we're part of the Plone core committers team. And so this is distinct from other open source CMSs like Drupal, where there's a handful, I think about 7 people who can commit code to core. And there's actually one guy who can reject all of the commits. So Plone is different in that respect, but Plone, in particular, in the last couple of years, has improved its code base, is moving to a different kind of user interface model that I'll say, well, I won't say very much more about. Plone 5, which is hopefully going to be ready for us to announce publicly at the Plone Symposium here in June, will have a JavaScript-heavy user interface design that will separate the front end a lot more from the back end. So what you'll see is the ability for people to theme sites and improve the user interface with JavaScript is going to be significantly better than even what we have now. I did want to point out that we have some cost efficiencies here, that we went from having 30 sites on campus to about 300 sites in 5 years. Our projects that we tackle are of massively greater complexity because we're confident with our knowledge of Plone and the stability of the Plone feature set, and we are doing it with fewer people than we had 5 years ago, but we're maintaining 10 times more sites. That's not to say that what we're doing is perfect. Going back over the last 5 years, as I reflected on this, it's clear to me that, and especially as part of this process, it's clear to me that the resourcing that we have here is severely strained. Other universities like Louisville can do the same kinds of things with 3 people, but I mean, I hear about their workload, and it's not, I don't think it's a sustainable workload. And so the implications for what we're looking at here in terms of spending money potentially on outside systems or proprietary systems or changing systems is what I think I said early on at one of these meetings, which is that we could do a lot more if we had better resourcing in the Plone support team. And so that's something that I hope I can convince more people around, especially with the IT reorg proposals that have been floating around. I'd like to see a little bit more support given to what we've been able to do so far with a handful of people. And I really emphasize that because when I look at outside vendors who talk about how easy upgrades are and how managed hosting is going to be for us if we were to use their solution, hey, we could do that for you too for $500,000. But we can do a lot more in-house. And I've been warned about saying we can do it for less money, but I think we can do it for less money, and we can certainly do. We can continue to do a great job with the deployment of what we have now in our knowledge of how to deploy Plone. I wanted to close with a sense for you of what we can do in the future going forward with Plone, which is to be able to use some of these features that I've shown you, the things that are just part of Plone itself, to reuse and reshare content out and make our websites, our 300 or so websites, something that behaves more like one big website, a rich website that highlights all the different activities and information that we generate on campus as part of our work, and turn it into essentially, and I don't, Victor's not here so I can say it, a portal really for different kinds of users on campus. Beyond what current students are doing, they could log into a Plone portal and view a dashboard of what they're interested in seeing. It could be prospective students who see what new courses are being offered in USP versus parents who are interested in other aspects of what their sons and daughters might face here, community members who want to see a login page with their dashboard so they can see all of the services that they use from the university, the Business Success Center, Wisconsin Family Business Forum, and so on, and just highlight the news relevant to those things for those members of the community. And obviously alumni are an important source of donations and contact with the community. We could give them a portal too. And this is just repurposing content that's on Plone sites. If we tagged it correctly, if we use RSS feeds correctly, if we use Push Hub correctly, if we were consistent in the kinds of training we can roll out to different site owners on campus, this is the kind of thing that I see is possible with what we have right now on this campus today. So all of this is possible today using Plone with 0 licensing cost, 0 transitioning time, 0 risk. In terms of site rebuilding, we don't have to go back and rebuild sites. We don't have to spend 5 years rebuilding sites or maintaining 2 systems in order to transition to another system that may or may not actually do all of the things that we know today Plone does. As I said, Plone 5 is going to incorporate Dexterity, Diazo, Deco. I know those are kind of geeky tech keywords that don't mean a lot to you. Well, Diazo, you should remember, is the new theming mechanism that's already part of Plone, so we're ahead of Plone 5. Deco is the cover layout, the dynamic layout engine I showed you that will be in core. Dexterity is already in core. This is a way of creating custom content types, which Plone is moving over to. The thing that I wanted to say about being in the room is that at the symposium this past June, several of us from UW Oshkosh were in the room when developers, Plone core developers, were negotiating what was going to go into Plone version 5. We were in there, we influenced what is going to be in the Plone roadmap for 5, what's being developed right now at Plone sprints around the world. We were in there and we changed what was going to be in Plone because we know the features that we use on campus. First of all, we don't want them to go away. And secondly, we know the features we like to see get moved into Plone core. So the workflow designer tool that we've been rolling out on campus, that is going to be moved into Plone core. And that's being worked on by a computer science student from this university. And that's essentially my presentation.
Thank you. Yeah. Any questions?
Can you explain, I mean, I don't use Plone much, but probably a good example. Talk about how you have all the different containers and different sites like that. I know there's, you say feature or whatever that Fork 3 has. How do we maintain or handle the disparate amount of servers? At some point, someone would have to go through and rebrand the 3.x sites.
I'm glad you asked that.
We had issues with that where we had to start fresh on 5 sites because it didn't go from 3 to 4.
Okay. There are all sorts of ways that you can get hung up if you added a whole bunch of custom products or add-ons to your site that aren't supported anymore in new versions of Plone. That's the #1 way you get hung up. And because of that, that's the kind of experience that we've developed over the years where we've decided that, hey, early on we said, hey, look, there's this new add-on. Let's just slap it in there. And we started using it. And over time, we decided that it wasn't that great. And then we got caught because it was harder to upgrade a site that used that old feature. And so we've developed an understanding of how to gauge the value of an add-on. Again, it's something that it's kind of been developed through pain. But in terms of the upgrade path, we went from the Provo site being on version 3.1 something of Plone, and we upgraded all of their content. And seriously, it was like 1 export, 1 import. I mean, there was almost nothing I needed to do to make it work. There are features in the new campus theme that are different in terms of like the menu layout and some of the JavaScript and some of those things and some of the things that Brian put in there for calls to action, for example. But the import-export was literally a couple of clicks if you bring over the content alone.
I think one of the things that you'll find too is like in older websites, people have built written custom code in order to make it do something that Plone could have done anyway. Things like doing sliders, they've written custom code to do a slider which didn't go across to the new site. So that's some of the hang-ups that I think we were talking about. Whereas if they had used what was built in Plone or knew that it was there to begin with, what Tom was talking about, they would never have written the code to begin with.
I would also say that there are different ways to upgrade your Plone containers. You can do upgrades in place. I'd have to look at the details of what you guys have run into, but
I just meant as a whole. We talked with some other sites that or other products that explain how they do, single click site-wide management. We don't have that.
We don't have that. As I was saying, it's sort of an adaptation of the fact that we were running so hard at these things. But and Sean and I had a long conversation about that, which is that if you look at the original Louisville model, where they put everything in one big container, and at the time it had 200 sites in this one big container. If you want to upgrade your version of Plone, you've got to upgrade that whole container, which means that if you want to check that every site in that container works well, you've got to take the time to sit down and click through every page to make sure that it works. I'm not saying that it wouldn't work, because if you're using vanilla Plone or you're using products that have been maintained correctly and have followed through with the upgrade path that Plone Core has followed, then you don't have any worries. You can literally go to each site, click one button, and you're done. Click one button, you're done. Next site, next site, next site. And then, but if you really want to be careful with your users, you want to check all of those pages look right. And sometimes you'll catch a customization that was good for version 3 of Plone but isn't relevant in version 4. So that's why we've kind of we've asked for help, because we didn't have the manpower to do that kind of upgrade. And so as a result, we've left sites running on older versions of Plone in those older containers, just as an accommodation to the resource constraints we had. And in fact, also because those site owners just don't care. They just don't want to do that kind of thing. They don't want to take 2 days to click through their site and make sure that it works. And so for those people, it was easier to just make a new container, put new Plone sites in that container. One thing, I could go on, sorry. So the Louisville model is this one big container, and as I said, they've seen the pain of it, and they're moving away from that one big container. Penn State WebLine was creating one virtual machine for every single website that they created. Every single Plone site had its own entire virtual machine, and the reason why they did that is because they didn't want to deal with interdependencies between sites, because they also had a different department that managed their virtual machines. So they could throw this thing over the wall to the poor guy who was running all those virtual machines and say, "Hey, it's your fault. It's your baby to maintain." And so that guy was saddled with a greater workload, but it was more convenient for WebLine to do it that way. So we've found a good, what I think is a decent middle ground. It's got costs. I mean, obviously, when you want to upgrade a footer in a 4.3 site, it's not going to apply to the footers in the 3.1 sites. But with Diazo, and as we slowly upgrade sites, as we update sites and move them into newer versions of Plone that have Diazo, we can actually point them to those central hosted themes that just then will propagate immediately whenever there's a change to any aspect of the theme.
You said it took you 2 days to upgrade the Plone site. Do you feel that that is a standard length of time that it would take you for the majority of the university sites?
The Provost site was cleaner because there weren't a lot of add-ons, so we didn't have to worry about add-ons. It was basically Plone core with the theme product that we had for the 3.0 sites. And so that made it a really easy upgrade. There are some older sites that have a ton of things on them, like if I look at, I can't think of off the top of my head, anything that uses beyond, well, I mean, there's some sites that have a lot of add-ons that I would say would be a little harder to work with. The Philariasis site, I mean, there's a lot of functionality in there for online ordering and repeat ordering and the database and the collections. I would say unless that particular site owner says, I'm willing to spend some significant amount of time doing a site upgrade, they're not interested in having that changed because they're happy with their functionality. The Provost site was a weird beast because we were asked to upgrade the technology for it, and so that's what we did. And so then when we did that upgrade, we said to them, hey, look, you're done. And they said, yeah, but now we're going to want to edit the content. We want to reorganize the content. We want to make changes to the content because we've been waiting for I don't know how long to make these changes, and they were just holding off those changes. And they preferred to make all those changes before the site got made live rather than what we understood needed to happen, which is let's just upgrade their technology, give them 4.3, Plone 4.3 with the new theme, with the responsive design, and then go live. And then they could continue editing. They chose to wait for the editing to take place before they go live. So the technology upgrade was extremely rapid for that one. And I'd say probably, well, I'd say maybe half the sites on campus have that little amount of customization. Probably we could do those that fast. And the other sites we probably have to take more care and take more time with. One of the things I wanted to well, actually I had on a slide here was the concept of a managed turnkey system for our campus sites, our campus site owners. Some of the pitches that we've heard from vendors are that, hey, you know, we'll do it all for you. If you need new templates, we'll build them for you, and then we'll show you how to do them, or we'll do your site upgrades for you, and we'll slurp your old websites into our new content management system for you. I've been in sales, and so I know what goes into making a sales pitch. And one of the things they're not telling you is how much it's going to cost you to do that. And as a sales guy, I would also hide a lot of the complexity in what I was proposing needed to happen. And so one of the things I'd like to be able to do on our campus is to treat our customers more as that kind of thing, where you are a customer, you pick up the phone and you say, Kim, I need a website that does this, this, and this, and this, and I need you to upgrade this site over to this, and I just don't want to deal with the problem. You deal with it. And I would love to do that. I don't have enough staff to do it. Do you want the real numbers, or do you want
I
that?
don't want like dreamland, but
Okay.
realistic.
I think I've mentioned at an early meeting before, we've lost most of Dan Peterson's time. He was our system administrator. We've lost most of his time. You can call him in if there's an emergency, but that's about it. He doesn't do any of the Plone containers management. I do that. He doesn't do any of the Plone patching. I do that. He doesn't do any coding. We lost Nathan a long time ago, but he was a brilliant coder. We need to poach someone like David from the library. We had there were two guys who worked in IMC, Josh Klotz and Jeff Hersig, who were phenomenal with their knowledge of Plone, because one guy had started doing coding, and so he was a good coder and he was a good SOAP administrator. He was able to do a lot of things that then kind of devolved on my shoulders when he left. So we need a system administrator. We need a dedicated trainer to roll out better training. We need more forms and workflow application on campus. So if you look at what John and Luke have been able to do, that's just 2 people. And we lost Luke because he's hired now. He's been hired by OIE, and then he's going to be hired by Grant. We've lost him for the campus. I don't want to lose John either. So I'm looking at maybe 3. We've lost essentially 3 people. And if we had those 3 people, we could just do amazing things. And I'd like to say that we'd be able to do a turnkey solution that wouldn't make me ask for Sean's time when we want to do a site upgrade. I mean, you should be able to call us and say, hey, I want you to upgrade the home site. Let's just do it, and we'll have a responsive design for the home site. And I'd love to be able to do that. It's a question of prioritization and how many resources we have. So 2, 3 people, it would be nice to have.
You see in the future of Plone as you work on the roadmap any sort of support for some of the marketing functions that we're seeing in some of the commercial products? And some of the features that have been really impressive in the commercial stuff is support for A/B testing and email marketing, and some of these are incorporated into the CMS, which would make hundreds of $1,000s by spending on advertising right now a lot more effective. Do we need to go back to the site or smart? Is Plone going in that direction?
Well, if I look at what we're there's been discussions about CRMs. I don't know if that comes into it, if you're dealing with contacts as well. But there's integrations, there's add-ons for Plone that do that kind of integration. So I know MailChimp was one that Brian and I put in for a site that we built for someone else. I would love to hear more of the specific features. Like if you could tell me which feature. I know, like on Ectron, I think they had a plugin that showed how many page hits were coming to that particular page based on Google Analytics or something like that. I mean, I think that was actually not functionality built into Ectron, but it was actually a plugin that ties into a service from another party. We can do things like that if it's not already there, and so I haven't looked to see if that sort of functionality is there, but I believe if it's not there, we can do it. And that would be a great way, a very, I think, cost-effective way for us to spend money. Keeping the base core functionality of Plone plus all of our experience, plus then spending a little bit of time or some money hiring a developer if we can't do it in-house, hiring a relatively inexpensive developer, or even 6 feet up if we wanted to pay top dollar, and have them build that functionality and turn it around. So please, give me specific things that you love in those content management systems, and let's talk. Let's do it.
Okay, well, I think we're out of time for tonight. Thank you.
Stop it.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Will you stop it?
Yeah.
See,
Problem is you went into sleep mode. All right.
I didn't need to take any notes anyway. So I
Go to window. Yeah.
I'll look on the switch tabs. A little over the top.
We're still recording.
Oh, good.